Hello students, I am Ms. Naziya Patvegar. I welcome you all to my new YouTube channel Ilm Express, wherein I will be discussing certain important concepts of commerce. I am a lecturer in commerce, net and set qualified, and I truly believe in concept clarity. Whatever subject it may be, concept clarity is the only key. So I hope you all will encourage me by liking my channel, sharing it, subscribing it, and by pressing the bell icon. So the first concept of commerce that I'll be discussing in my first video is fund flow concept. Fund flow concept. Now usually most of the commerce students who are in BCom or who are in MCom are studying it, or those who have finished their BCom and MCom have already studied it. This concept sounds very simple and easy, but if you go deeper and deeper, it's not that simple, it's not that easy. There are too many technicalities, so I'll try to make these technicalities a little simple. I'll try to develop a link in everything so that you understand this concept in depth. Now let us get started. The first thing that I would like to discuss is the meaning of fund. So the moment I pose this question to my students, what do you understand by fund? They come up with the answers like fund means money, funds means cash, funds means bank balance. Yes, true, but this sounds a little vague. It's just like hitting around the bushes. So what does this term fund includes exactly? The term fund includes cash, cash equivalent, cash equivalents, and working capital. And working capital. Now, we all know what is cash. Cash is a medium of exchange. We use this money, this is hard cash, liquid cash, which helps us to do transactions very fast. But there are some students who don't know exactly what is cash equivalent, what all items cash equivalent includes. So let me give you all a brief insight as to what this cash equivalent includes. So the cash equivalents include stock, debtors, bills receivables, etc. So in short, your cash equivalent includes those items which can be easily converted into cash, or which these are those items which you can give in exchange of just how we use cash in exchange, like that stock, debtors, this you can exchange and the payment is done. So the items which can be easily what you all should remember is the items that can be easily converted into cash are called as cash equivalent. So I hope now cash and cash equivalent is clear to you all. So when we are discussing the concept of fund flow, there are some other items also which comes in the category of cash equivalent. Now what are those items? Those are short-term investments, short-term investments and marketable securities. So these items are also included in cash equivalents. So now this is cash equivalent. Now the concept of working capital. We will be discussing how working capital is included in funds. So cash equivalents all together, okay, both this together is nothing but your current assets. You will classify all these items under one head, that is your current assets. So now this becomes your total current assets. And you know what? In your financial management subject, you all might have studied working capital, wherein working capital means gross. There are two types of working capital, gross and net working capital. So gross working capital means total current assets. So your gross working capital means your total current assets. Then what do you mean by net working capital? Net working capital means current assets minus current liabilities. So here in this definition, in this meaning of fund, it includes cash, cash equivalent and working capital. Means what? It includes all current assets and excludes current liabilities. I hope you all got it. Fund means it includes cash, cash equivalents means it includes your total current assets and excludes your current liabilities. So your net working capital is also known as, this is also known as net current assets. So fund means net current assets. So another name for funds is your net current assets. So cash, cash equivalents makes your current assets. Total current assets are gross working capital, but the meaning includes net working capital. So net working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. So when you exclude from your current assets current liabilities, that working capital is being considered in the fund. So actually the entire meaning of fund revolves around working capital. It revolves around working capital. How? We will try to understand it little later. I hope you all understood the meaning of fund. Fund means cash, cash equivalents and excluding current liabilities and making it a working capital. So now let us try to understand the meaning of flow. This term flow is not a new term. You all know something that is in movement is known as flow. The river flows just like that. Something that keeps changing its position. Now here flow in layman's language in normal terminology is known as change. So fund flow means in simple terms it is change in funds. Change in funds. And I told you funds are nothing but working capital, current assets minus current liabilities. So fund flow is actually change in working capital. Change in working capital. Is this clear? Fund flow means change in working capital position. Change in working capital position, if there is change in the entire year after doing certain transactions, if there is change in the working capital, that means there is flow of funds. If there is no change in the working capital, that means there is no flow of funds. Now to understand this concept well, we have the flow of funds. If you want to understand the flow of funds, in almost all kind of textbooks you will find this chart. This chart is basically this chart is basically required to understand flow of funds in depth. So I'll be just drawing the chart. If you all want, you all can note it down, or you all can just pay attention as to how the movements takes place. So I'll be just drawing it here. If you all want, you all can note it down. Fund flow statement, how the funds flow and how the funds doesn't flow. So now here fixed liability, fixed assets, fixed liability and capital we will take. Two items, fixed liability and capital, current assets and current liability. So these are four items that you will find, four basic classifications that you will find in the balance sheet. Now I'll just show you all the flow of funds. If there is transaction between fixed assets and fixed liabilities, there is no flow of funds. If there is transaction between current assets and current liability, there is no flow of fund. But if the transaction is between fixed liability and capital and current asset, then there is flow of fund. Fixed assets and current liability, there is flow of funds. Fixed liability and current liability, there is flow of funds. Fixed assets and current assets, there is flow of funds. So your dotted lines shows no flow of fund. Dotted lines show no flow of funds, and straight lines show flow of funds. The straight lines show flow of fund. Now, I know you all might have not understood anything by just looking at the chart. Understanding the chart is very important to understand the concept of fund flow. Now, I have told you all fund flow means change in working capital. Change in working capital, and working capital includes two items, that is current assets and current liabilities. So basically it is change in current assets and current liabilities. So now all these items we will try to understand with the help of examples. Now for that you'll have to imagine a balance sheet, because all these items, all these four items you will find in the balance sheet. These are basic heads, and some items in these heads you will find in the balance sheet, and the changes in this, if they lead to change in working capital, that means there is flow of fund. Changes in these doesn't lead to change in working capital, there is no flow of fund. So to understand that, we need to take a balance sheet. Nowadays we prepare a balance sheet in vertical form, but then for a better understanding I'll be just drawing a T form balance sheet. So I'll be drawing it here so that I can show you all the transactions over here. So this is the balance sheet. We will be taking some items: fixed liabilities, fixed assets, headings. These are current liabilities and current assets. So in my fixed liabilities, I'll take shares, debentures. In my fixed assets, I'll take building, machinery. In my current liability, I'll take creditors. In current assets, I'll take cash. Just for your understanding, examples related to these items I'll be giving. So I need not tally the balance sheet. Only understanding the change in current assets and current liability is enough. So whatever figures I'll be giving, there is no need of tallying it. Just for understanding sake, we will write some figures over here. 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 50,000, 10,000, creditors 40,000, and cash 1 lakh. So this is just for your understanding, because I'll be taking some transactions and I'll be explaining how these transactions will impact your working capital position. So our main focus should be only on change in working capital rather than other items. So how transaction between these things brings flow of fund and doesn't bring flow of fund, that we will be discussing one by one. So now right now, when I have given you all this example, you can just see current liability is 40,000, current assets is 1 lakh. Okay, current liability is 40,000 and current assets is 1 lakh. So what is the working capital position now? Working capital is 60,000. Okay, so our present working capital is 60,000. So this you all keep in mind. Change in this will bring change in flow of funds. Now we will first discuss the transaction where there is no flow of funds. So the transactions where there is no flow of fund is current asset and current liability. So let us take a current asset and let us take a current liability. Current asset that we have is cash and current liability that we have is creditors. So now let us take a transaction wherein creditors are paid in cash. Creditors are paid in cash. Now what happens? Creditors are paid in cash means creditors will go off when you make the payment, and from cash how much money will go? From cash 40,000 will go. How much remains? 60,000. Now what is your current asset? Current asset 60,000. Current liability 0. 60,000 minus 0, 60,000 only. So the working capital remains the same. See now what is happening. Your current asset is becoming 60,000. Current liability is 0. So working capital is 60,000 only. Does this transaction brought any change in the working capital position? There was no change in the working capital position. Therefore, there is no flow of fund when the transaction is between current asset and current liability. Similarly, we will take another example. I'll set back my example again. This is 40,000. And this is 1 lakh. I hope you all understood this transaction. Let us move to the next transaction. The next transaction says transaction between fixed liability and fixed assets. Fixed liability or capital and fixed asset doesn't bring any change in the flow of fund. So let us take a fixed liability or capital and a fixed asset. So fixed liability, let me take debentures. Fixed asset, building. So let us say that debentures are paid by transfer of building, or building is transferred to debentures in full settlement. Building is transferred to debenture holders or to debentures in full settlement, or redemption of debentures through building. Debentures in full settlement. So now in that case, what happens? Debentures are only of 50,000. So 50,000 is gone from here, and partly building is also gone, or building is also gone. Debentures in full settlement, the building is been given. So building is also gone and debentures are also gone. But does that has any impact on your working capital? No. The transaction is between fixed assets and fixed liabilities, so it does not have any impact on your current assets and current liabilities. Therefore, your working capital, what is your current asset? It is 1 lakh. Current liability is 40,000. Working capital again is 60,000. So this transaction has no impact on your working capital because it has no impact on current assets and current liabilities. So therefore, there is no flow of funds. So I hope you all understood this, this no flow of fund and this no flow of fund. So now we have discussed this no flow of funds. We will be now discussing the transaction which leads to flow of funds. So I will be just erasing this. Now we will be discussing the transaction that leads to flow of fund. I will be coming back to my example. This was 50,000 and this was 2 lakh. Now, the first transaction that I will be discussing over here is between fixed liability and current asset. So we will be taking a fixed liability and a current asset. Fixed liability is debentures. Let me take debentures. And current asset I will be taking cash. Now let us say the transaction is redemption of debentures, and the redemption is done in cash. So redemption of debentures in cash. Of debentures in cash. This is the transaction. Now debentures are of 50,000 rupees. So 50,000 will go from here when you pay off the debentures. Debentures are not, they will not be in the balance sheet anymore, and your cash also, the cash also comes down to 50,000 rupees. Now what happens? Your current assets minus current liabilities, your working capital. Current asset is now 50,000 and current liability is now 40,000. So your working capital becomes 10,000. There is change in working capital Earlier working capital was 60,000. Because of this transaction, working capital came down to 10,000. There is change in working capital. That means because of this transaction, there is flow of funds. I hope this is clear. Now we will move to the next example. We'll move to the next example. I'll be correcting it back again. Okay. Now the next example is between fixed assets and current liability. So we'll be taking one item of fixed assets and one item of current liability. So fixed asset, let us take machinery, and current asset, let us take creditors. Now if I say that this machinery is purchased on credit basis, okay, machinery of 10,000 is purchased on credit basis. Machinery purchased on credit. Now this will have impact. Machinery of 10,000 will come on the asset side and it will increase the value of creditors by 10,000. So creditors will become now 50,000. So now your current assets are 1 lakh. Your creditors has gone up from your current liability. Your creditors has gone up from 40,000 to 50,000. So now your working capital is 50,000. So earlier your working capital was 60,000. Now it became 50,000. There is change in the working capital. That means there is flow of funds. I hope you all understood this example. Now we will move to the next example where it is the transaction between fixed liability and current liability. Transaction between fixed liability and current liability. I'll just correct this example. Fixed liability and current liability. So fixed liability and current liability. We will take current liability as creditors and fixed liability. One more item I'll be adding. Loan, long-term loan of 60,000. Long-term loan of 60,000. So loan and creditors. So loan is taken to pay off creditors. Loan taken to pay creditors. Now when the loan is taken to pay creditors, the loan is of 60,000. Now you will be paying your creditors. Creditors are gone. Now what happens? Current asset, current liability. Current asset is 1 lakh. Current liability is 0. So your working capital now will become 1 lakh. So when the working capital is becoming 1 lakh, that means there is change in your working capital because of this transaction, because of the loan taken to pay off creditors. So this leads to change in your working capital and there is flow of funds. I hope you all understood this transaction as well. Then the next transaction that we will be discussing is current assets to fixed assets. Current assets to fixed assets. Let me just correct this question. Fixed assets to current assets. Now fixed asset, let us take an item. Building, and current asset, cash. Let us say that building of rupees 2 lakh is purchased by using partly cash. So cash paid or machinery we will take for better understanding. Machinery is purchased by Machinery is purchased by paying cash. So purchase of machinery is the transaction. Purchase of machinery. Now what happens? Your cash balance will come down to 90,000 rupees. It will reduce by 10,000 rupees. So when it becomes 90,000, your current assets are now 90,000 and your current liability is now 40,000. So the difference between this will give you working capital of 50,000, which is different from this working capital. So there is change in your working capital. So that means there is flow of funds. So in all these situations where there is transaction between fixed liability and current asset, there is transaction between current asset, transaction with fixed assets, transaction with fixed liability, there is flow of fund. Current asset, transaction with fixed assets and fixed liability, there is flow of fund. So what you all have to remember is, you all have to remember one simple thing, that there should be either change in current asset or there should be change in current liability. That means either current asset should remain same or current liability should remain same. When current asset is changing, current liability should remain same. When current liability is changing, current asset should remain same. Or if any changes are taking place between both, there should not be proportionate changes. Proportionately less changes or proportionately more changes should come to bring the change in working capital, and only when there is change in working capital there is flow of fund. So I hope you all have understood this concept of flow of fund. Further I will be discussing the formats. There are 3 steps in having flow of fund statement. How to prepare flow of fund statements. So there are 3 steps wherein you all have to prepare funds from operations, you all have to prepare a schedule of changes in working capital, and lastly it is your fund flow statement. And I'll be discussing certain problems also on fund flow concept. I'll be giving it in my description in the next video. I hope you all understood the concept, you all liked it. I hope you all will subscribe and encourage me to come up with more such video channel. Thank you.